For two. See, he's not well. He's not. You're going all the way down to London just for one day. Wait a second, you're going all the way there for one day?
Yeah. You don't understand. You
can watch me play. I play every so about every 6 months. St. Mary's. What fed up playing?
I think we should next time thing.
I wish.
We're not going to get the teachers put out. It's like you go to Cove.
It's a long sled.
Yeah, it's great.
You get by yourself though?
No.
So the main point is the with a friend. It's like, yeah, a chance to talk to a friend.
One of your workers, you mean? Yeah.
It's a business expense.
Can you do it? Okay, sure, get off the post. We're up to ein Chesed Amud Aleph, 17. You should open this data thing. You should put the stands. You've taken all the connecting things that we use with Salon now.
Okay, well, at least it got use for him.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a scam.
Okay, we're up to that. Yoma. By the way, somebody sent me an email today. We finished 20% of Shas. Those are start of Brachos. You saw it? Fifth is a big shot. It's one like. You can start getting ready for the Sima Shas. Where should we make it?
America. We'll go to America.
We'll go to the moon. Anyway, less than that. It's not worse. Okay, says the Gemara. We're up to ein Chesed Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the wide lines. Veish Gelusa Higla Legrunya. The Veish Gelusa, the head of the exarch, the like a kind of Nasi, went to a town called Hogrunya. The Bei Rav Nosson, to the house of Rav Nosson. Rafam and Kulu Abon Nosson the Pirka. Rafam, in order to be the Chachamim, came to hear the drasha. Ravina Loyasa. Imagine an important person comes to town. He stayed in the house of Rav Nosson, and Rafam, when everybody came to the drasha, Ravina never came to the drasha. Until you've experienced it, actually something doesn't come to your drasha, it's very, very painful. So therefore, what happened was, Rafam did not want that the Reish Gelusa should be annoyed with Ravina, because it's not good to have conflict. So he tried to make peace. So how do you make peace? Is you come up with an excuse as to why he never came to the drasha, a good solid excuse. It's a Wimbledon, but that didn't exist in those days. That's by the better one. So he said, Rafam wanted to get Ravina out of the mind of Reish Gelusa, meaning out of his anger. Omali. So this is what he did. In front of him, he asked him a cross-examination, why you never came, and then that way you can understand. Why didn't you come to the Shiur? My leg was hurting me. So he said to him, if your leg is hurting you, you should put on shoes. We will see shoes was something which was not like nowadays everybody wears shoes. So it was a luxury to a certain extent. So he said, if you've got bad foot, put on shoes and you can still come. So he said, it wasn't the top of the foot. Putting on shoe makes it more painful because the shoe grasps it, pinches it off. Why did you walk in sandals? Sandals like Crocs. There was a pond in the way, and I couldn't get through. You should walk through with the sandals on. One should not walk with a sandal through water on Shabbos. The reason is because the sandal falls off easily, and the person will end up carrying it and carrying on Shabbos. So therefore, Ravina had a very valid excuse why he never came to the Shiur. So next time you don't come to the Shiur, you have to tell me that your foot hurt the top, and there was a pond, and there was a Shabbos, and you couldn't get through. Tell me, Rabbi Yehuda Steinberg. Also, you're not allowed to sit on mud on Yom Kippur. We learned they're not allowed to wash yourself. This is a kind of washing yourself. It has to be where it's moist. On my Abaya, with Tefeach Nos Latfiach, with Tefeach Nos Latfiach, it has to be so moist that it makes other things moist. Wait a second. It's not the signal's not here. It shows the signal's fine. I'm using the silence. What?
It wasn't good before.
It's very interesting. If you do the Dilshu Mishnah Bur, it's 2 days ago Mishnah Bur. That of Dilshu. There's a fair on Friday, but this Mishnah Bur was from a few days ago. The Mishnah Bur writes that on Yom Kippur you shouldn't play with mud if the mud is wet enough that it makes other things wet. Why? Because it's a kind of washing yourself. It's kind of washing yourself. And Mechitza is also on Shabbos.
It's like clothes on Shabbos, you wash it on Friday.
Oh, the water that oh, very good. The mutter it's standing the pairs. The person is very hot in Yom Kippur. You can take a cold apple and put it against your face to cool down. But Yehuda Steinberg, the cow, he would be standing with a gourd, it's called, like a kind of vegetable. Rather than standing be a nuke, he would take a baby, hold the baby to his face, and the baby would cool you down. So he's got cold hands. The baby has a cold hand to cool himself down. What? No, it's allowed. He says allowed. You're allowed to use a baby, you're allowed to use a child, but not ekdish. Not makes you wet. It gives you pleasure, but we said pleasure is not the point. It doesn't make you wet. More says it's allowed to use a baby. It's a good point. Robert the Casper used to use a becher. If you get a cold metal cup and you put it against your face, it makes you feel refreshed. So that's what he used to do on Yom Kippur. Omar Papa, Kasa the Casper mole osa. If the cup is full of water, it is osa. Chosa shoib, if it's missing a bit, it's mutter. Why if it's full of water, can you not put the cup against your face? Because it'll very easily spill, and it's all, and therefore the pachrob, if it's made out of earthenware, idvidi osa, mishum the mishchel shocher. If it's earthenware, maybe you'll tell us earthenware. Why earthenware is always osa, even if it's only half full? Oh, it leaks through. Earthenware goes through, and therefore what happens is you make yourself you're getting wet. Oh, what's the word? Permeates. Oh, very good. We're learning good. Very good. Thank you for the word. Permeates. That even metal, and even if it's only half full, it's also awesome. Why? Because it slips easily. Metal is very slidey, and it will slip out of your hand, and it will spill over you, and then you wash yourself, and therefore it's awesome. Se'evi Bar Chama was the host. I mean, his job was he owned a hotel, and he invited Amir of Asi, Bishab and Levi, and all the Talmidei Chachamim. Omani Rabbi Yosef Beit of Bishab and Levi. He told Rabbi Yosef, son of Bishab and Levi, Bar Arya, the son of a lion, or the son of a Talmud Chacham. Come on, tell you something good that your father did. I just say it outside because there's two Gilsois very briefly. That means on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, you're not allowed to wash. The problem is that sometimes you have a bit of dirt, or you're feeling very hot and you want to wash yourself, cool yourself down. So there's two Gilsois, as we just said. One Gilsois, what he used to do is, he used to wash him, he used to take a towel and put it in cold water. Then on Tisha B'Av, he would use it to dab his forehead to cool himself down. On Yom Kippur, he would first squeeze it out, and then he would put it on his forehead. Mashiach on Tisha B'Av, he didn't bother squeezing it out before. Anybody wants to suggest why on Yom Kippur he was more machmir? There's the issue of schita. He was scared about the schita. So he squeezed it before Yom Kippur. Alternatively, on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, very similar, but what he says on Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av, what he would do is he would wet it and use it on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, wet it and use it on Tisha B'Av. On Yom Kippur, what he would do is he wouldn't wet it. What he used to do is he stick a towel, dry his hands the whole of Yom Kippur. Whenever he needed to dry his hands, use the same towel. When he would come to Yom Kippur, that towel was a bit moist, and then he would use it to wipe his face. Similar idea, slightly different way of doing it, slightly different nuance, what the difference is. The Shiur says that on Yom Kippur, many times a person can have grit in the eye, or there's a better word for it, a better word. Grit in the eye. Not dust. What did you say? Yeah. No, there's no English better words for it. Says in the Shiur, you're allowed to lick your finger. That means lick your finger a tiny bit, and then put it through your eye and take it out, but only the area where it is, not other places. Okay. And he learns from this Gemara. So let's see inside. Again, Toy Melach Nus Valayis of the Book. I'll tell you something special. You follow it to B'Shab Levi. What was B'Shab Levi renowned for? Anybody know? No, another one. That was a different B'Shab Chananya. What did he say? He never saw a Rebbe in his lifetime, and he went to the Gan Eden alive. B'Shab Levi was one of these very special people. You want to know what he did on Yom Kippur? Mitzpachas Levi Yom Kippur, he had the handkerchief, he had the towel before Yom Kippur. V'Shego Yisip B'Mayim, he would soak it. He would then squeeze it out as if it's dry. And he would wipe it over his eyes. We will put it underneath this pillow. The question to me says, why would you put it underneath this pillow? It says an interesting thing. I don't see it scientifically so easily to understand. He wanted it to remain wet. And if you hang it up to dry, it will dry. So you would take the towel, wet it, put it underneath this pillow, and that way it would still be properly wet the next day. No. That's right, no air. But I would have thought that the pressure of the pillow would maybe dry it. Okay, here. Actually, it's true. If you put a wet something in the cupboard, it doesn't dry so well. He would then dry it out on the Yom Kippur. You told us other way around that on Yom Kippur he wouldn't dry it out, but on Erev Tisha B'Av he would. We asked you the kasha of schita. So therefore we see this halacha that you're allowed to use a cooling method, which is not proper b'chitza, to either wipe his face with dirt or to cool one's down. The Gemara later is going to be another question they asked, which had to do with Yom Kippur. But since they asked the two questions at the same time, therefore, the Gemara brings the first question first. The halacha is, if a firstborn is born, what happens? I know that's by a donkey, but by a normal animal, it goes to the Kohen. What does the Kohen do with it? He brings it as a korban in the Beis Mikdash. Nowadays, there's no Beis Mikdash. What would the Kohen do with it? He redeems it, but he has to wait for something to happen before he can redeem it. Yes, and this was a huge headache for Kohanim. Once discussed it to great length quite a few times. Why? Because you could end up having a sheep, and you could spend looking after it for 15 years, never being able to shear it, never being able to work with it, or a cow, and then waiting for more. So Kohanim were choshud, they were suspect about mumming. And what would happen is, whenever there would be a mum, you'd have to go to involve with the animal and get involved to pass that indeed it's a mum.
So they weren't allowed to ship.
Not while they didn't have a mum, no, not while they before. I don't know, because the sheep not sheared, they would die also, I don't know. So Zokin v'yeshiv b'yeshiva. If it's a Talmud Chacham and he learns the yeshiva, normally we say, we have nowadays smicha for Yehuda, smicha for Chosh Mishpat. In those days there was smicha for being matir b'chayros. The question is, somebody who's a renowned Talmud Chacham doesn't need to get smicha from the Nasi to be matir b'chayros. What's the shine? That means they wanted that the Nasi was a very important job. The Nasi was their physical leader, was the king of Klal Yisrael. If you remember the whole story about Gamliel, they made Rabbi Yisroel stand up 3 times and eventually they fired him. Gamliel was the Nasi. The Nasi wasn't always necessarily the greatest Talmud Chacham. The Nasi was always descended from David, and he was always the one that controlled all matters. I mentioned very briefly a couple of days ago about Karol, that he wanted to be the Nasi and he didn't allow him, and he broke off from Klal Yisrael. So the Nasi had to have certain rights. So perhaps they gave him the right that he should be the one to allow matter b'chos in order that his position should be established. So therefore, so Dimma Kim the Zok v'yeshiv v'shiva in Tzorich. Omad b'tzodik b'chaluk al v'agav v'man yoises v'yeshiv ben zimor shezok v'yeshiv v'shiva hoya. Omad lemayla, that's how I should read it, not Beis. Lemayla mizkenu shosev, and not al v'shus matter b'chos. You have to ask permission. It's the right that you have to ask permission. Omad Rabbi, you've got the story wrong. The halacha is like this. The that a kohen cannot come and say that his animal, which is a bechor, had a mum. Why? Because he's a suspect that maybe he did it, maybe he put it in, etc. The question is, can a kohen paskin about another kohen's sheep? There are those who hold that why not? He gains absolutely nothing from it. It's not his. Oh, no, not shares. If he owns part, it's his. Oh, you might have an arrangement. If I permit yours, you'll permit mine. And therefore, there's a man that says what? The Gemara says like it's 2 lines to the bottom. He's not even allowed to be edus for somebody else. But he's not believed on his own, he's believed on his friend. And that is what the shaila was, nothing to do with the nasi, a whole different shaila. The sukkah boilu, then that's another shaila, which was the shaila which we brought up, which is why we mentioned it over here. Ma'ulot says the sandal shel sham, top of Ein Chesed and Beis B'Yom Kippur. Are you allowed to use a shoe made out of sham? There are two halachim in the Rishonim what is sham. Some say it's cork. Cork is a kind of wood which you use to sometimes used to bottle wines. It's a soft wood. Others say it's rubber. It's rubber. I once read a biography of Rabbi Yashiv, and they said that the stories that all this Talmidim wrote that one Erev Tisha B'Av they saw him coming home from Tisha B'Av davening, walking with the Crocs in his hands. Said him what happened. So he said like this. If you look at the Shmuel talks about this. I walked to shul in Crocs, thinking that Crocs is not a shoe, so it's permitted. While I was during davening, I was thinking about it, and I came to the conclusion that really Crocs is so comfortable that you don't feel the pain. The Shmuel says there has to be discomfort in the shoes, both on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av. The Shmuel says it. And if I decide I'm not allowed to wear them, so if I carried them home. And in the story, they wanted to say, oh, Rashid didn't just like rest. He constantly was thinking how to do the halacha better and better. So this is the shaila here. So according to the shaila that sham is rubber and Crocs is rubber. So many times I have this question. I myself do wear Crocs on Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur. I myself don't enjoy wearing Crocs. My wife only wears Crocs. Even at home, the second she takes off the shoes, puts on Crocs. So she doesn't wear Crocs on Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur because at the end of the day, that's much more comfortable. She wears shoes. No, she doesn't. It's not bad. She wears some other what they call pumps. They call it. Yeah, the whole one. Yes, the very old things. But that is the shaila. So yes, Omar the Bisr ben Achmenia, Vaglav Omani Isis of Bishra ben Levi, Shiotz ben Sandal Shasham Yom my son wearing such a shoe. Va'minale betanis tzibur. What's about the tanis tzibur? In older days when there was no rain, they would make a special tanis tzibur. You'd have to weren't allowed to wear shoes. Omar Lilo Shnon makes no difference. Omar Baba Chanan Isis of Loza the Minimbe Shiotz ben Sandal Shasham betanis tzibur. Va'minale B'Yom Kippur. Omar Lilo Shnon. So you see, there's no difference. Therefore, you're allowed to wear a rubber or cork shoe according to this Gemara. He would wear shoes made out of this cork. Abaya Nofik B'Tehutzi. He would wear made out of palm leaves. He would take a shoe made out of a palm leaf. Rava Nofak B'Divli. He would wear divli is made out of grass. Rava Bavuna Koch Sudra Nofik. He would just take a cloth and wear it around his. The Shmuel brings from the Shin and Bach that if you want to be really machli, you should wear nothing except for socks, but nothing above on top of these socks. Because you wear them all the time. You enjoy wearing them. Yes. Okay. So the Gemara says that what? That even you shouldn't wear it. You shouldn't wear it.
No, they're not leather.
But you wear them all the time. It's not discomfort. The Shmuel says there has to be that.
So the answer should be able to put like a piece of stone inside your shoe.
Shmuel says you've got no choice. You've got no other shoes. You have to put stones in your shoes and wear that. Nicer. No, why can't you get yourself a pair of?
I'm saying that's sleeping with one pillow or something.
No, that's a Tisha B'Av. That's not your kippur. Yeah. I know. Every year happens. You only realize it comes to Tisha B'Av. Hakitea, somebody Nebuch who's missing a part of his leg. Yosef Kav Shelo is allowed to walk with his kav. Kav is a replacement. Prosthetic. Prosthetic is probably the right word. Prosthetic. He's allowed to. If you're allowed to walk on Shabbos with a prosthetic. It's machlekes ben Rabbi Yossi. V'tani alo v'shovin she'osi lotzis be'Yom Kippur. They both agree that if it's made out of leather, you're not allowed to wear it in Yom Kippur. Wood. This is wood. Here, watch this. I don't know. Okay, we'll see. So the Beis, you're not allowed to wear it on Yom Kippur. Now, what's the kash of it? Kash is like this. We just had a list of Amoyroim that went outside with reed, with rubber, different kinds of shoes. Why did they permit it? The answer is because they held that it's not a real shoe. If it's not a real shoe, so therefore it's permitted. Was it Rabbi Bar Huna? No, sorry, Romi Bar Chama. Romi Bar Chama asked the following question. Rabbi Yossi holds you're not allowed to wear it on Shabbos. Why are you not allowed to wear it on Shabbos? Because it's not a shoe. It's not a shoe. So therefore, it's not der malbush. It's carrying. It's not a shoe. But Rabbi Yossi holds a person that was missing who was missing a part of the limb is not allowed to wear prosthetic on Shabbos. Why not? Says Rabbi. Must be. What's the svar of Rabbi Yossi? It must be at this stage of the war that it's not a shoe. It's a bird. If it's not a shoe, nevertheless, they both agree they're not allowed to wear it on Yom Kippur. Is a proof that something which is not a shoe is still forbidden on Yom Kippur. So how could all these people go out with the rubber shoes and with the shoe made out of palm leaves? If it's not a shoe, we said that even if it's not a shoe, it is also. Answers the Gemara. They were talking about where it's got small grooves, and inside the grooves you put special soft cloth. And this is because of the pleasure, not because of the shoe. If it's not a shoe, can a piece of cloth make it into a shoe? Pleasures which is not a shoe is also, we've said many times, you're allowed to enjoy yourself in Yom Kippur. You would wear soft cloth and walk. Say from Beis a new shaila. This prosthetic, is it tummy or not? The halach is for something to be tummy, what does it have to have? Beis kibul. Beis kibul is the ability to hold something. Like a bowl is kibul tumah. So if it's got a beis kibul, it's tummy. And it says that if it's got a beis kibul, it's inside it, it's tummy, which is mashma. That till now we're talking about one which doesn't have a beis kibul. Not like you are buyer that says that we're talking about where it's already got a place to put the cloths inside it to make it soft, and that's why it's awesome. But we're talking about one which doesn't have. It doesn't have ksisin. It goes back. You misunderstood machlekes and Beis. Everybody agrees it is a shoe. A prosthetic is a shoe. And since it's a shoe, that's why it's forbidden in Yom Kippur. And something which is not a shoe is permitted. So why is it that Yosef forbids it? One man says, that you'll come to carry it. It says, we'll not come to carry it. That means, we thought in the heaven in the machlekes of men says, is it a shoe or not? And that's the machlekes allowed to do it on Shabbos. It says, well, that wasn't the machlekes. Everybody agrees it is a shoe. Machlekes is only whether you might come to carry it, and therefore that's why it's us. Okay. Tinoikis mutoid b'kulin permitted and all of them. Chutz b'nilas asadu, they're not allowed to wear a shoe. A child is not allowed to wear a shoe. I remember a few years ago, when Yom Kippur, and my 2-3-year-olds were screaming that they want to wear the Crocs, they want dafka the shoes, and they couldn't put the shoes on themselves, and they were shouting at the wife, "Put my shoes on, put my shoes on." So the shayla, so what's the halacha? It says you're not allowed to put on the shoes. Since you're not allowed to put on the shoes, so therefore the problem is like this: if he would put it on himself, it wouldn't really be a problem. Why wouldn't it be a problem? Because they're not chayav chinuch, they're tiny. But the problem is, there's an issa even for a 2-year-old to feed him or to do, which is also for him. So the also Shema Zaman wrote in Shema Shabbos Kol Chasam in the old edition that it's not in the new edition. That there's a fundamental difference between nowadays and old days. The Gemara is going to say that shoes is not a necessity. Shoes that don't. Therefore, you've got to stop your children wearing shoes in Yom Kippur. He says that was in the olden days when most children walked around barefoot. Which child could afford a pair of shoes? So therefore, on Yom Kippur, you can. Nowadays, that all children wear shoes, it has become part like washing them, and therefore he permits you to put on shoes on a child. And this in Keresa Chutshadi argues, it says it's not true, that you don't need shoes and it's forbidden. So machlekes in the poskim as to whether a child nowadays is allowed to have a shoe or not. And then this Gemara also holds it's awesome. Shabbos brings a law that has become much more of a necessity. It says, well, my shon is a sandal. Why is shoes different? So the Gemara says, the Gemara suggests, Yomi inchi of delay hanoch, Yomi inchi of delay. That means the reason we don't allow him to put on shoes, because what will happen is people will say, his mother or his father put it on. And if his father put it on, so it's obviously permitted. And they'll put on shoes. It says, well, that is, if we allow it to wash a child, what will happen is, people will say, if he can wash his child, therefore I can wash myself. It says, well, no. What will happen is, if you see a child bathed, you won't say, if he's allowed to bathe his child, I can bathe myself. Because what will you say? Maybe he washed him every Yom Kippur. So it says, maybe when you put on the shoes the day before Yom Kippur, he hasn't yet taken it off. Well, you see a child walking around with shoes. Why should you say, not at this stage, understand the reason is because it'll come to a michshov for other people. Furthermore, what's the michshov? You see a child walking around with shoes, you say to yourself, his parents put on yesterday. So the says, no. It's impossible. The person wants to taste the taste of death. There's time as Sunday Veligni. You should sleep wearing his shoes. It seems that when you sleep wearing your shoes, there's a certain depth to the sleep, which is me'en misa, the taste of death. So therefore, when you see a child walking around in Yom Kippur wearing shoes, you know very well that the parents never put on yesterday. They must put on today. If he can put them on, I can put them on, so it's no good. But washing, you'll say to yourself, he looks freshly washed. Maybe you go wash the day before Yom Kippur.
I'm referring to leather shoes.
Yeah, it's just leather shoes. It says permitted lechatchila. That which is not necessary for the development, they forbade it. That which is necessary for the development, they never forbade it. So basically, there are 5 inuim, and of them, wearing shoes is the only one which is not necessary for the development, so therefore they forbade it. But anointing and washing, which is necessary for the development, they permitted. And here the Mishnah writes that the Maisa nowadays, we don't wash the children every day. Since we don't wash the children every day, there's no heta to wash them even on Yom Kippur. So he does too. So I remember years ago, it was called Shlomo Weintraub. It's not the famous Weintraub, it's a different one. It was really Weintraub who lived in, there's a different Weintraub. This one, every time Tzachon lives in Kiryat Sefer. And he used to speak about the fact that in Eretz Yisrael, the Yom Kippur can be very, very warm. And what happens is, if it's very, very warm, so the children get a heat rash very, very quickly. Very, very quick. So you have to wash. So he held that if a child is good, if a person is mad with his child every day, so you can even wash them on Yom Kippur. But he would say that if you're going to use soap and things like that, if it's necessary, you can't do it. We talked about washing shechitza shinatan is mutter. The sicha, even if it's not shechitza, is also. So he used to suggest that the mother should wear gloves, and in that way avoid all problems. And he also used to say that you can't use hot water. You don't need hot water for this kind of thing. It's so hot outside. You should use as cold as possible the water should be. And also you can't use water which heated up in Yom Kippur. It has to be water which heated up before Yom Kippur. But otherwise, again, so more this differentiates between that which is necessary for the development, that which is not necessary for the development. Tell you the truth, I don't know what happened to. Somebody told me that he asked for Falk, can I let my child play clicks on Shabbos? Clicks, so it's like a game, you put pieces together. Falk said no. His wife said, there's no way I can have such a thing. She called him Falk, my children need it. Can they play clicks on Shabbos? Yes, it's fine. So I was got upset. How can I do this? And he called the Falk back, and he said, when your wife said it, I realized it's with Bisayu. And I say, if you look at the Bialoch, it's Shin Mem Gimel, it's the Shabbos, he brings this Nakud. That which is necessary for the development of a child, Chazal don't forbid it. So doing clicks, they said to Rabbanon, something which is necessary for the development, Chazal never forbade. And the way your wife spoke about it, I realized is part of the development. That's what he said to him. And if you look at the Bialoch Shin Mem Gimel, Imamish says it. Imamish says, and he doesn't speak about clicks, he speaks about Issa Rabbanon, which is necessary for the development. Okay. It's a fact. Okay. Now God tells us how to develop a child. Only aim. We always said this, that he didn't have a mother. He never saw his mother because he had a mother, but he never saw her. She was left out by as soon as he was born. So it means his wetness. To develop a child, make sure to do a lot of warm water and oil. God to get a bit bigger. You should give him eggs in kutach. What's kutach made out of? Moldy bread, milk, and salt. So you should give your children eggs, kutach, when they get a bit older. God to they get even bigger, to they should break things. That's part of the development. He brought cheap, damaged earthenware vessels. They were already cracked. Someone would actually go and break them in order to. That's part of the development of the child. So therefore, that is the halacha. And it comes out that is God shoes what you should do. Okay. Hamelech v'akala yichatzu espedeim. They should wash their face. Bas listen, man, who's our mission like Chidim and Shaduni? The Tanya. Hamelech v'akala lo yichatzu espedeim. Not allowed to. Chidim and Shaduni. Mishuv blaza. Hamelech v'akala yichatzu espedeim. Allowed to. Achai lo tinulis a sandal. A woman just gave birth. Shum wears shoes. Chidim and Shaduni. Mishuv blaza. Achai tinulis a sandal. She's allowed to. She is allowed to. My tama. What melech my tama? Mishuv dichsim melech b'yofyov techazedu einecha. There's a mitzvah that the king should always appear beautiful, and therefore he has to wash himself even on Yom Kippur. Kalamai tama k'desh l'tiskana al balo, that she should not be off-putting to her husband. The Chai Adamite, which the Rome brings it, and the sword Rashi on Aradaf brings it. And nowadays a kala doesn't have this heter. Why? Because you don't see your colors these days. You go to shul in the early morning, you don't come back till late at night, and therefore there's no heter for a kala to wash herself nowadays. How long is a kala considered? This Beis is actually talking about never somebody where the father or mother died after the chuppah preparations were prepared before the chuppah took place. So therefore, what do? You quickly do the chuppah and you only bury them afterwards, etc. But why won't stop? He's going to show him that when you learned this Gemara in Ksubah, he was bothered that he said to his Rebbe, like, it's such a strange question. Like everything's ready and suddenly the parents die. Like, how likely is that to be? Then he became a Rav. I said, you can't imagine how many times such a thing happened. I said, always thought that the Chazal tell us a scenario, you shouldn't make any. But the Beis there says that if such a case happens, that means what happened was that you only bury the parents after you do the chuppah b'las mitzvah and everything else. The Beis continues, even though she's an Aveda, and she becomes Aveda when? The first day of the Chasna, we still allow her to have Tachshit Kol Shleishim Yom. Is a raya that what? That you're kala for 30 days. So therefore, B'chama brings it. That for the first 30 days after a woman's married, she's allowed to wash herself even on Yom Kippur. But the Maisa, as I mentioned, the Shmuel says nowadays you don't have a heter. Because of cold. Or mashmon machal sakanos akov mutter. If a person's scared of being stung by a scorpion, it is mutter, and therefore it is, and therefore you're allowed to wear shoes in this dangerous situation. I want to do a little bit more because we're going to have these days got a long daf and also next week we're finishing. So if you like a big date, boy or papa, is it with the pip or without the pip? Now, this very seemingly simple question, there's a huge discussion in the Rishonim. Anybody want to suggest why there'd be a problem with this question? No, because we try to measure the size, the volume. The big question is, because the Mishnah says clearly, let's see the words of the Mishnah. I thought it's not easy to remember, I must admit. Mishnah says, where is it? I've lost the place. The Mishnah says clearly the answer to this question. How can you ask a Shaila what Mishnah asks? So Rashi says, if you look at Rashi, that like it, there's two ways to read it. Like it and its pip, there's two ways to read it. Like it and its pip together, the two together combined, or like it or its pip. According to Rashi, a very interesting thing according to Rashi, that the pip of it is the same size as the fruit. And therefore, the more had it sad, does the Mishnah mean like it and its pip, the two together, or like it or the pip? And then that means either one would be a way to measure, which is very, very strange, because it would come out that you'd have to say the pip of this fruit is the same size, which is very, very strange. Oh, Tesis asks the Kasha of Rashi. At the BV and everybody asks on Rashi. And they say that the question was, of course, it's the size of it with the pip. The question is with the pip out or the pip in. The question is what difference to make. And there's two very small explanations, very small differences. One is that between the fruit and the pip, there's always an air space. So the most question is like this: do you measure that air space as part of the shear or not? Do you say it's like it and it's pip and that's it without the airspace? Or no, with it, without the pip, you can do the pip as if it would be stuffed, like a stuffed. Sometimes you can stuff a pepper, right? When you stuff a pepper, there's much more inside the pepper, certainly like that, than it would be without. So that's another shayla. Well, the Beis says this pshat is that when you pull out the pip, you always lose a little bit of the fruit. And the question of the Gemara is, when we take out the pip and then you fill it, do you fill it with the amount you took out and then you fill it up completely or not? That's the shayla. Let's do a little bit more. The halacha is that tumah is how big does a bone have to be, like a barley. Bekliposa, v'lo or we talk about barley with the pill or without. Moist or dry. Moist or dry, which one would be bigger? Moist, barley, moist. I want to show you say it, but I just want to make sure. So one of them is the peel. Without the peel, we're going to be machal. See, okay. So the Mishnah says big. It says gas nan. That's how I get. The gas, the bigger the better. So therefore, it's obviously with the pip and with the space of the pip and with the amount of it. You have to manage a full fruit. But popularly, if it's moist, it's not a sa'ira. It's called a shibolus. It's not called sa'ira. It's called ushti. So a papa paskas of Rashi, one the chumma, one the kula. Regarding moist or dry, he's machmir that even if it's small, like a dry one. Regarding the klippa, he says it has to be with the peel. That's what I want to point out, moist or dry. That means like this: a bone the size of a barley is matami. How big a barley? So it has to be with the peel, but a dried one. With the peel, therefore, it has to be a bit bigger, but a dried one a bit smaller. That's how much is matame. And if a person touches it, it's matame like a normal tumas mix. Okay. All right, it's a new sukkah. It's very good. We got a new sukkah.